You're listening to Discography Discussion, episode 131, Diamond Head. Hosted by Dan Terry.
Literally walks over, starts shaking everybody's hand like,
hey, how's it going?
Yeah.
Got any of the good shit?
Josh Baldridge.
I get friends calling me going, hey, man, get me in? He's like, go buy tickets.
And Joseph Wren. We used to have interludes in the show when Dan forgot what he was looking for.
Don't you ever.
Presented by discussmetal.com. And if you think Diamond Head is a really shitty Metallica cover band, you are clearly not ready for this episode of Discography Discussion.
Yeah.
And if you are, Josh is going to set the record straight for everyone.
You bet your sweet ass, Joe.
You ever wonder where
am.
Metallica got their sound? Basically right here.
The new wave of British heavy fucking metal. Straight out of your ass.
The no-wobum. No-wobum? Is that like the new wobum? No-wobum.
Yeah, thanks, Lars.
Yeah, that kills me. The new wave of British heavy metal.
Isn't there an easier way to call it what it is, guys?
Bands that sound like Iron Maiden.
English metal.
And Saxon.
And Saxon, yeah.
Why aren't we talking about Saxon?
Fuck, I don't know. Do you guys want to hear Saxon? Hit Dan up.
Hit me up. We'll talk about Saxon. It'll be a saxy good time.
You're a clever guy.
I think what's interesting about Diamond Head is that they have so many ups and downs.
That's an understatement.
I can barely even comprehend the type of changes that this band has gone through throughout their career, and I'm having trouble figuring out how they didn't get more popular despite having a push from the biggest band in the world.
They were their own worst enemy, that's why. No thanks, we don't need the popularity, Metallica, we're
I think
good.
it's the same story with a lot of bands. There's always just one guy in the band that just doesn't want to do anything.
Who fucks it up for everyone else.
Totally.
What has life taught you about that guy, Dan?
Don't be that guy.
Don't listen to him. Kick him out of the band.
I've been that guy.
James is like, guys, do you want to open for us? Like, do you want to go on the road? They're like, nah, we're okay. We like where we're at. Are you sure? But it's the truth. Metallica did every damn thing but physically make these guys go and tour with them, and they said,
did tour with Metallica.
Did they?
Yeah.
When?
Oh, I don't know. That's a little bit.
I'll take your word for it.
They did. It was like whenever Diamond Head came back, because this is a band that basically released 3 albums via their own career, their own promotion, all that shit, and basically just disappeared into obscurity because the third album, as we'll get to,
holy fuck,
is a little different than what we would really want as fans of heavy metal.
It's just not pretty. But hey, it starts off classic as fuck when it comes to metal.
Well, before we start talking about some classic as fuck British heavy metal, I want to take this time to say thank you to everyone for listening to the podcast. Thank you for listening and for subscribing. If you are not a subscriber, then you can find everything Discography Discussion at discussmetal.com. We are on Spotify, Apple and Google Podcasts, TuneIn Radio, Stitcher, so if you have an Amazon Echo or a Google Home, you have no excuse. Ask it to play the latest episode of the Discography Discussion podcast, and it will. We're also on Facebook and on Twitter at Discuss Metal. Be sure to like, favorite, and subscribe. It really helps us out. It lets us know you're listening, and now Dan is going to tell us all about 5-star reviews.
You know, guys, Joe wasn't lying about how much it helps us out. Rate, review, and subscribe. It's the lifeblood of podcasts. Blah, blah, blah. You guys have all heard me make this speech, but seriously, leave us a review. Leave us whatever you think we deserve. We are on so many different podcast platforms, I can't even keep them all straight anymore. So if you're listening to this on a podcast app that I don't know about or that lets you leave a review, leave us a review. We want to hear from you guys.
Please. We appreciate it.
Zayo came to St. Louis last week.
No, they didn't.
And then I did.
Dan's just now coming down from that high. I think he just now sobered up too, and this was a while ago.
I'm starting over again, though, tonight, so we'll see where I'm at by the end of this episode. I think the Zayo show was one of the greatest things that I've done this decade. See, the band hasn't been to St. Louis in like 13 years. As a matter of fact, they were trying to figure it out on stage, and they still couldn't figure it out. They're like, how many years has it been since we've been here?
Which is ironic since their biggest fan of all fucking time lives here.
I know, that's what I'm trying to say.
Makes zero sense.
No, it was a lot of fun. We hung with the band for a little bit, gave them some beer. It was kind of awkward. I kind of felt like Forrest Gump because I was like, hey, guys, I brought you this beer. I drank some, and
beer was
and
good.
I did. But they took the leftovers after the show and rocketed right out of town. Totally. But yeah, the Zayo guys were a lot of fun. They played hard. There was a band that played before them called Hollow Earth that really caught my attention. I think Jeff actually bought their LP.
Hey, y'all.
So I'll have to go over to his house and steal that because I just, I spent like what? How much did I spend on beer? Like it's like $100 or $80 or something like that.
Undisclosed for the purposes of this podcast.
Copious amounts of alcohol is required.
Dan's like my lunch money. I saved it all week.
I know, dude. I was like, dude, are you serious? I love Zayo, but I still managed to scrape together enough cash to get a new Zayo shirt. So now I've got like 30
14.
Zayo shirts. Yeah. They're all different sizes. So it definitely adds credence to that joke of I wake up in the morning and look at my closet and I'm like, which Zayo shirt am I going to wear today?
That's kind of funny.
Hint, the new one.
It was really cool.
Got a really cool screen printed poster from Zayo. It was awesome. Did not have them sign it because I went and saw them last year in Indianapolis and I like made them all stand there in a line and sign all my stuff.
Like the true fucking fan he is.
Yeah. This time I was all like, welcome to my town.
Let me take you guys around.
They were pretty impressed that we're allowed to legally just stand in the street and drink.
Yeah, nobody in St. Louis is going to stop you for that.
Apparently that's like not legal anywhere else. Because for the longest time on this podcast and even on my other podcast, people are always making fun of me about, they're like, Dan just said he went to a gas station and bought a whole bunch of beer. Apparently that's not common.
Yeah, no, we do that a lot here. Sorry.
You can buy beer pretty much anywhere in Missouri.
Yeah.
Chuck E. Cheese, beer.
Yeah.
I mean, wherever.
To live here, you have to be drunk 24 hours a day, and that's pretty much how we live our lives here.
Really is. That's probably where all the metal comes from.
That's right. We have metal and beer. That's all we got to offer here to keep us alive.
Well, Diamond Head has some stuff to offer us.
Tell me about Diamond Head.
They got some stuff to offer us.
Oh, my goodness.
They got really good stuff. They got really bad stuff. And then they have really good stuff again.
Well, why don't we start? End of episode. We'll see you guys next week.
Tape it.
Yeah. No, in all seriousness, in 1980, they released Lightning to the Nations. Yes. And Diamond Head had been around for a while before that, just trying to
70s at least.
Yeah, and you could hear that heavily. Lightning to the Nations is a classic heavy metal album, which you would definitely say is part of the new wave of British heavy metal. Very mean-sounding riffs, kind of where you're like, wow, we're playing with distortion now in a way that makes us sound a little bit more evil than our peers.
It's kind of Black Sabbath-ish.
A little bit.
Like, when you think of that sense, it's that.
Everything in 1980 was Black Sabbath-ish,
yeah, I mean,
though.
But with them being an English band and coming from over there, I don't... Like, when I think of Iron Maiden, I don't think of them as Iron Maiden yet. I think they're a little darker than Iron Maiden at this point.
Well, I don't know about that. If you factor in the first two Iron Maiden albums with Paul Di'Anno singing, you get kind of the same vibe.
You're wrong, Dan, but that's fine. We'll give it a tie and call it a
I'm
day.
sorry. I thought I was Discuss Metal Dan.
Were.
Oh, okay. Now you're Discuss Metal Dan.
It's all in the same vein. We'll agree with that.
Iron Maiden was more melodic than this.
Yes, they definitely twin guitar sound, more harmonies.
But I think Paul Di'Anno from Iron Maiden had a little bit more, if you want to call it a more...
edge to his voice.
Yes.
Yeah. I know where you're going. I know what you're talking about.
I wanted to say brutal, but that doesn't really apply here. What I like about this record is just all the rock and roll vibes.
Yeah,
there didn't used to be such a fine line between metal and hard rock.
This is your crossover band.
Some of these riffs, when I hear them, I'm like, fuck, I'm like in the middle of America, like getting just blitzed off of Bud Lights and ready to get my Camaro and drive it down the road.
Yeah. And this...
We don't endorse drinking and driving.
No, we do not. It's bad. Drink and Uber. That's what we suggest. Or Lyft, whatever you are.
Well, we didn't have Uber back in the 80s, so...
No.
We weren't alive in the 80s. What are you talking about?
I was.
I was alive in the 80s.
Not the early 80s.
I wasn't alive when this album came out.
No, but you know who was alive? Metallica.
Metallica.
And they fucking loved this band. This is one of the bands that they were influenced by heavily. And if anybody who follows old school metal knows, they had a compilation album called Garage Inc. that had so many songs from this band. And particularly this
Pretty much
album.
had this whole album.
Yeah,
on.
this album almost to a
The
T.
Prince, Am I Evil, It's Electric, Helpless.
And for good fucking reason. I mean...
I would consider those songs to be greatest hits of Diamond Head.
Yes.
I admit, I know about them because of James Hetfield, but that's not a bad thing. That's like saying Zayo is a Dan Terry greatest hits band.
That feels like you got to go check this stuff out. And we're like, all right, James, we'll look.
Hopefully I won't be saving Zayo from obscurity. I will say that what I liked about this first Diamond Head album is how evil it sounds.
Very evil.
And not just because of like, oh my God, am I evil? Yes, I am. Am I evil? It's that obviously that song's on here, but what I liked about this album is that they kept the lyrics relatively like metal tropey. I think even at the time it would have been considered generic with how obsessed with like evil and death and Satan they were. But I'm kind of okay with it because it's such a classic throwback for me. Maybe I would have criticized it more in the 80s, but for what it is now as a throwback, it's great.
Well, not too many bands, if any, were really doing this, so it's kind of the start of something. Over here in America, this, other than Black Sabbath, I mean, you don't really have that many bands over here that sound like this. Thus is why this comes from overseas as opposed to starting here.
Sean Harris had a really smooth voice, which I thought was interesting because whenever you take a song like I Am Evil, he delivers it so smooth.
Yet
My
so
mother was a witch.
So
She
creepy
was
at the same
burned
time.
Alive. Yeah, like, and it's not like Metallica who basically just came in and just manned all the way through it. So what I really like about this delivery is that it kind of, in the same way that Ghost evokes evil, is kind of the same way that Diamond Head evokes evil.
Yes.
It's so beautiful, it must be evil.
Has to be.
Right, but I mean, obviously the riffing and everything that leads up to that is so dark sounding, like and then it goes into that solo. It's just, or not really even a solo. It's just finger tapping.
That's right. Yeah, it's a little lead.
And that's kind of what I like about Diamond Head, especially on their first two records, is that they are kind of sloppy.
Yeah, they're not technical by any means. These aren't guys who were, professional musicians sounding.
No, they started in a garage in 1970 somewhere. And
Some of these guys probably just learned to play their instruments within the last few years of recording this.
Yeah, and they're like, dude, if I could sew a patch onto my forehead, I would.
Exactly. Which leads us into that second album, which I thought was just as good as the first album.
Oh my God, dude. Borrowed Time is actually a huge step up from Lightning to
Everything.
the Nations. It's
Sound quality, production, technicalities.
very similar to the differences between Kill 'Em All and Ride the Lightning.
Seeing a pattern here, huh?
It was kind of, well, unfortunately.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
you'll see.
My favorite thing about these classic Diamond Head albums is that they show off the ingredient that would become thrash metal. Yes, it's the new wave of British heavy metal, but thrash in America in the 80s, that Metallica, Megadeth, Anthrax,
Fuck you.
and of course Slayer, you can tell that Diamond Head had a piece of that. I get the same feeling listening to Blue Oyster Cult with how melodic it was. The previously mentioned Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, British Steel, and Black Sabbath. Diamond Head plays the melody and the chords a lot more Blue Oyster Cult-ish than, say, a Judas Priest, which was trudging on the open A and the open E. And Motorhead has to be in there too, but that's a completely different animal.
Yeah. And there's nothing to disagree or dispute with that.
The biggest step up on this album is the way the drums sound. Don't they sound huge?
Yeah.
Like they're playing, like it's finally got that classic heavy metal sound.
Lars gave him some advice.
Lightning to the Nation sounds like it was recorded in a fucking garage.
Which it probably was, given how most of these bands in that era started. So,
Borrowed Time sounds like a studio album.
Yeah, the guys got their shit together.
Put out by a label. The songs are catchier. They've got more hooks to them. The music sounds better overall. Like, you don't have as many like blatant mistakes on the recordings as you did on Lightning to the Nations. Like, we didn't care.
No, because it was
that
just
album,
fucking a good intro to a good band.
With Borrowed Time, there's clearly a producer involved who's like, no, play it again.
Yeah, you can do that one better.
Totally.
Play that drum track better.
And I think the issue is that this record sounds a little bit more commercial. And it kind of makes me sad because I kind of feel like this is their peak.
Yeah.
This early into the discography. Just that they have never sounded this good up to this point.
Yeah.
And like, to me, I almost would consider this to be their first album because it's them showing their best side.
Album one's a demo.
Totally is a demo. What I think's weird about Borrowed Time is just that, like, how sing-songy some of the songs are, but with him also having like super fucked up lyrics. I'm gonna read a little bit of my favorite if I can, Joe, if that's allowed.
Do it.
In the chorus of Borrowed Time, he says, "I have loved, I have lost." You're like, "Aw."
That's sweet.
Yeah, then he's like, "I have killed those who have loved me so." Wait, what?
What the fuck did you just say?
Can you back up? What was that last part? Yeah, and then, Lord, I don't know. I'm living on borrowed time. So you realize that like this isn't some guy that's like down on his luck and is maybe has a terminal disease or something. And no, this guy's fucking killed people and worships Satan, and he's people are tracking him down trying to kill him.
But in a very melodic way.
Totally. Well, and he the Satan thing isn't just inferred. He goes to search for love, all in my heart. Is love enough, or is enough love? As Satan's child, I stand alone in hand. I'm a nomad of this desert, barren lands. I'm like, fuck, dude. I can't figure out if you're trying to make us feel sorry for you or if you're just going back to the whole, you guys remember? My mother was a witch.
That's right.
Just wanted to let you know.
So this is the album where he's on the run?
Totally.
Oh, yeah. They caught him the first time sacrificing children, and now he's like, shit, I'm out of here.
Damn it.
They're on to me. And then what happens after this, I don't fucking know.
Well, here's a couple of things I'm going to say about the Borrowed Time era. So Sean Harris is their lead singer and their guitar player as well, and rhythm guitarist. Been in the band all the way, since 1976. He has an amazing vocal delivery. He has evil lyrics. You could see James Hetfield sitting there being like, wait a minute, that's a great idea.
Write that down.
I think really my big issue with it is that he's so good as a metal vocalist and rhythm guitarist, yet it's going to come out later on in their career that he doesn't really like heavy metal.
Which will blow your fucking mind.
It's so weird to me because I feel like there aren't very many people out there that liked Slayer for a year and then moved on to something else. I don't see that.
Who does things like that?
Yeah, I don't see that in metal, so it's going to be really weird to see the direction that they took on Canterbury.
Hey, let's start a metal band to get famous, and then let's totally change what we're doing.
Here's my question about the early 80s heavy metal. The line between hard rock and heavy metal was very thin as far as what you were in the popular music genre. Def Leppard was called heavy metal. Then they were called hard rock really fast.
I just call them shitty.
Is Diamond Head trying to be hard rock and they were just lumped in with heavy metal because of where they started?
No.
That's a resounding no. Lighting to the Nations and Borrowed Time are metal albums through and through.
They check off all the boxes for metal.
Just with the chord progressions, how heavy the riffs are, the solos,
lyrical content
for sure.
I don't know what happened here. Maybe they didn't write. Like at this point, they've got the fame enough for them, and now he's like, I want to do what I really wanted to do in the first place, and that was sound folk and poppy.
But they don't really have the fame.
He might have in their eyes.
I mean, Diamond Head was never a huge band.
What, Joe, you have it up. What year did this come out? 83, is that what that says?
Yes.
So this comes out 83 in England, and at the same time, Kill 'Em All is being released. It's hard to think that these guys, when this album comes out, influence one of the greatest thrash metal bands of all time.
Well, that first record is metal as fuck, though.
Yeah, but did you hear this shit? It's like, what the shit is this?
It's 1983, and Photograph was about to make the airwaves.
Fuck that. I'm sorry.
This is clearly pandering. This is like, guys, you gotta start writing songs that are for people, like real people to listen to.
You gotta
Sounds like every record label ever.
Totally.
You gotta have 50% chicks, and they don't like shit about Satan.
This is right. This is kind of the Black Album moment that every band goes through. We talked about it with Death Angel, except those guys just kept it metal and didn't care what anybody thought.
Thank you again, fellas.
Thank you, Death Angel.
I hate this album. Everything to do with it.
Canterbury is a pop rock album. It is.
I didn't even want to give it a chance.
Just listen to how weak the guitar is.
It is. Nothing on this is great.
How is an album that came out in 1980, written in 1979, have a crunchier fucking riff department?
The answer is this album had a producer.
Yeah, well, he was a stupid producer.
Well, do you make him just rewrite their songs? See, and I would have believed that if they would have put this album out and then immediately the next album they put out was like
metal again?
Metal as fuck.
I just would like to know, was it a combination of the lead singer wanting to change the sound and the producer going along with it? Was the producer making him change their sound?
I'm going to blame it all on Sean because he's not in the band anymore.
Yeah, Sean, what were you thinking, guy?
Fuck you, Sean.
I mean, even your next album. I mean, come on, guy.
Canterbury's just...
It sucks, Dan. There's nothing to say about it. It fucking sucks.
It's bullshit. It's a shitty 80s rock album.
Yeah, this is cheesy. This is like Kiss or some bullshit like that.
And trust me, like there's
Sorry, Kiss
plenty
fans.
of there's plenty of other way better places to look for good 80s hard rock.
You guys can skip this album, hands down. I give it a -1 out of 10.
And this is why the band is relatively obscure. This was kind of their last album as the original Diamond Head.
Yeah, this next album doesn't get better for you either, guys. Sorry.
One more thing on Canterbury.
Hit me, Joe.
It was produced by Mike Shipley. Mike Shipley is known for producing Crybaby,
Oh,
Def Leppard,
get out of here.
and Devo.
Devo. Here, I remember what I was talking about, how there's a lot better places to look.
Remember what I said about that 80s hard rock pop thing?
Who approached who? That's what I want to know. Did he want to work with them, or did they want to work with him?
Yeah, but he did Pyromania.
It was 1983.
That was fine.
Yeah, but
they
Def
wanted
Leppard-
to make money. The
Def
record
Leppard
label said you
always-
need a producer if you're going to record an album, even
Def
though they had
Leppard
already done
always-
2.
Def Leppard always has and always sounded like the same band. It's not like Def Leppard started out as a metal fucking band and then sounded like this bullshit.
I mean, did they walk into the studio and they're like, hey, you guys remember Borrowed Time? Yeah. You remember Lightning of the Nations? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, forget all that.
Forget it.
We're not going to do it.
This kind of thing pisses me off with a band like this. Like, I just don't how you can 180 from this shit. This is I'm done. I'm done with this album. It just fucking frustrates me with a band like this. You want to try something and do something different? I'm all for it. I have no problem with trying something cool and different. This is it. This isn't a travesty to metal. That's all there is to it. You can't have the first 2 albums that have the influence you did on so many American metal bands and then put shit like this out and stamp your name on it.
Well, let's recap what's going to take place in the next 10 years for Diamond Head. They basically broke up
Yeah.
after this because this is still shit. You can take something and cover it up with a pop sheen, but if it was always shit, it's going to still be shit. This did not catch on like Def Leppard did. It didn't catch on like Devo did. It just didn't work, and I think it's just the material wasn't good. It doesn't even sound like their hearts were in it.
No. It's just really disappointing.
This is also the 80s when there was no way an artist could put out an album and accept that it fails, immediately reverting back to their original sound. You couldn't say, "Oh, guys, we're sorry about this one. Am I evil? Yes, I am." No, the fans, the general public would not allow that to happen. It's always about the newest album at this point. That is the band.
To be honest, I don't think this got in the ears of most of the general public. I don't think that they really caught on as a band.
No, the ones who hated this album were their hardcore fans, and that's why they break up. Their fans fucking hated this album.
But by 1993, who was really popular?
Guns N' Roses, Metallica. I mean, if we're talking
Metallica.
American band, but
Metallica
Nirvana.
was
yeah,
one of the
I mean, you've
first.
got
Jam.
grunge.
Metallica was one of the first bands to be like, guys, Diamond Head, seriously,
Yeah.
you guys like Metallica? Diamond Head put out these 2 albums. They're incredible. We're covering a whole bunch of the songs from the first album.
That's why I gave this band a listen, was because of that.
When James Hetfield says, guys, check it out,
You fucking check
you
it
check
out.
it out.
He knows what he's talking about.
And I would agree with James all the way until we get to Canterbury. What's crazy is that Metallica was like, check these guys out, and they started reprinting the albums.
Yeah.
They started
years.
getting, it's got to be weird, right? You're at Sean Harris's house, and the postman comes up, and he's like, hey, got something for you. And it's like a fucking royalty check for like $4,000. It's like, holy shit. Okay.
Crap. Yeah, let's re-release
Wow.
this motherfucker.
Yeah, dude, let's do it. So they come back briefly with Metallica. Metallica's giving them the attaboy.
You can do it. Get
we're
back
gonna-
up there on the horse.
We're going to take you guys out on the road. We're going to tell people you're our biggest influence.
And it didn't work.
It didn't work because, yeah, they'd get up and play Am I Evil and some of the old hits. But it was around this time that Sean, their lead singer, was like, dude, I don't really like being associated with the new wave of British heavy metal.
Which is mind-boggling, but whatever.
I'm all about whatever pays me.
He's a hired gun. And that sucks.
I think part of the reason why the Metallica push didn't work was just because it was clear that his heart wasn't in it.
No.
You see Metallica in 1993 and it's all fucking energy. Hit after hit after hit after hit. And then Diamond Head comes out there and you know a few of their songs and the singer's just like, "Yep, I'm just up here getting a paycheck."
Cashing it out. See you tomorrow.
Exactly. And he just wants to move away from that style, but he's like, I don't want to give up the Diamond Head name because it had started becoming profitable for them again.
Sure, I need the money.
So they're like, well, we have to put a new album out. And they did. It's called Death in Progress.
Which, yeah.
It's better than Canterbury.
It is better than Canterbury, but by a pubic hair.
It's like 9% better
yeah,
than Canterbury.
It's like a quarter of a dick better than this.
I
that's
don't
about
know
it.
how I would feel about this in 93 because it's not grunge. It's not classic rock. And it definitely does not sound like the Black Album.
Do you remember when we talked about that band Bride?
He does, yes. Joe remembers the band Bride.
Yes, I remember when we talked about Bride.
They're doing what Bride was doing. They're trying to do what all of the 80s bands did in 1993, where they're like, we can't just sound like we used to sound because now everybody wants to talk about Alice in Chains, which we also did that recently. Oh, we want to sound like Nirvana. We want to sound like Bush, all these hard rock bands. How do we be hard rock but be better than those grunge bands?
You don't. That's the problem.
No, they did. Some did, though. Aerosmith did pretty good in the 90s, basically being a band, an older band that was playing a more modern style. They basically were playing hard rock, but with the caveat of, but listen to us, we can play, and we still have a shredder, and we can still play cool songs and solos and stuff.
It just sounds like it's not what they want. It's like they were being paid to do that. It doesn't sound like they were trying to.
Well, Bride was the same way. They put out an album called Snakes in the Playground, which was very similar to this musically, where it was a 80s rock and metal's response to the 90s. And it's going to satiate fans of those bands. But for a band like Diamond Head that doesn't have the rabid fan base that like an Aerosmith has, or even Bride had, they put this out, and for most people, this is a new band, and they're not playing a new style. So it sounds super dated anyway by 1993, and it's just sappy as fuck.
Yep, it's not a good album.
It doesn't have any of the aggression of the old Diamond Head in it.
No aggression. There's nothing memorable. It's not a great production.
And keep in mind, who are they touring with? Metal bands.
Yeah. How would you like to go? Yeah, Sea Slayer, Metallica, and then this band opens up, and you play this, this soft Bon Jovi sounding bullshit.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, no joke. Can you fucking imagine? It's like
that is a bridge I was not planning to cross, Josh. I'm glad you did it, though.
I don't have a problem. And it's, it's nothing against Bon Jovi. They did their own thing. They had their own sound. It worked for them in the 80s and 90s.
This is a band that has influenced one of the best songwriters of all time trying to hang 10 years later.
And it sucks. It really sucks. He could have done this earlier and been just fine.
Would this album have redeemed Canterbury if it was released in 1985? Or would we be comparing it to Master of Puppets in that it was nowhere near as good as that album?
No, I would be comparing it to their first two albums, and that would be the problem. They set the bar so fucking high on those first two albums that if they don't even come in anywhere hot close to that, then it just sounds like regurgitated 80s bullshit.
So does this album fail because it's too 80s for the 90s, but it doesn't adapt to what an album would sound like in 1993? Can a band that started in the 70s, whose first release was in 1980, who was a necessary part of the new wave of British heavy metal, release an album in 1993 that doesn't sound like the Black Album?
Yes.
But I don't believe what I'm hearing.
It's just not, I mean, it would have to, but it's not even a good sounding album.
There's no
it would,
heart in it.
No, it would have to be, if there was some aggression, if there was, you could tell that there was some balls behind it, even if it sounded 80s, I can buy that. I can ride along with that. But like Dan said, there's no heart in this. You can tell that it's just, there's a zero fucks given on these two albums.
There was
Clearly.
there was absolutely no, there was no cohesion in the band. It was all dysfunction. And by the time this was even released, the band was pretty much ready to split up anyway.
If they hadn't really on paper anyway.
Well, they had basically, the album came out. There was no touring on it or any kind of real push for it, other than the fact that Metallica was like, hey, you guys should check these guys out. They gave them a fucking free ticket.
But they'll redeem themselves, Dan.
No, not for a while they won't.
Hey, but they do eventually.
They tried getting the band back together between 1993 and 2005 a few times. But Sean Harris, being a douche, was just like, I don't want to be metal.
I want to be John Denver. Then be John Denver from the very fucking beginning and don't start this band.
And he goes, I don't want to use the name Diamond Head because people are going to expect it to be metal.
Gee, fucking shocker there.
And so
I'm angry on this one, just so everyone's aware.
Eventually him and the rest of the band part ways. and they hire a new singer named Nick Tart, and they put out an album called All Will Be Revealed in 2005.
To be clear, the album was called All Will Be Revealed. It was released in 2005. If this album had been called All Will Be Revealed in 2005, I would be accusing it of ripping off NES, insert name of Japanese game.
This sounds like this album reminds me of like 80s hair metal sound.
This sounds like Dan called me and said, hey, dude, I got this sweet idea for a new song, and it was a cassette that he had recorded in his basement, and said, I need you to put vocals down on this. All right, we're going to re-record the music, right? No. It's got to sound exactly like this. Because everything in the middle sounds like it was recorded on a 4-track cassette player. The drums sound worse than they ever have, but the vocals have that 2005... hey, I used to be in a thrash metal band sound going on, so this one doesn't sound the best.
Yeah, and the fucking sad thing about it still sounds better than Canterbury does. like it's a generic sounding album, but it still sounds better.
You at least believe this one.
Yeah, you at least, there's at least some semblance of an effort behind it as opposed to the last album.
I disagree. The reason I disagree is because I had really high expectations whenever I went into this, when I was listening to all these albums, because let's be honest, guys, I'm not a huge Diamond Head fan. I'm like, okay, so the asshole in the band's gone.
Yeah,
so now they can go on to become, fucking masters of the universe and release epic sounding metal songs like they did back in the 80s. And maybe that's not fair. It's totally not fair.
I think it was a progression. I think they were working their way towards it.
They got a new... No, they weren't. This is fucking painful.
I didn't say it was good. I just said it was better than Canterbury.
This is garbage hard rock.
Shit is
It's not really aggressive. It just has like good guitar distortion.
Yeah.
And like Joe said, it kind of still largely sounds like shit overall.
Shit is shit, but it's still better than some of their other albums that they put out.
The vocalist is good, but it's clear he just thought he signed up to be in a metal band.
Yeah. He sounds metal. The rest of them do not.
They don't. They just sound like old guys playing hard rock, and it's like 2007's or 2005's version of dad rock. You know what I mean? It's just not.
This dude wants to be metal, and he shows up, and Skid Row is playing in the background.
It's just dudes drinking Budweisers, trying to fix up that old Camaro.
Yeah.
It doesn't work for me, and it was really painful to listen to because I know that Diamond Head as an entity is better than this.
Yeah.
And they have been better than this. This isn't horrible, but it's still garbage.
This is the album they should have released in 1993.
This would have at least made sense.
Fit back in the 90s.
Chronologically, yeah, you can accept this a little bit more if this had been done earlier.
If Diamond Head released this in 1993 and they were playing a show with Soundgarden, Nirvana, Alice in Chains, Pearl Jam, I'm not saying I would have loved it, but it would have at least fit in with what was going on back then.
Totally.
2005, my only question would be, is this the album you guys were going to release before Sean came back in the band?
I do wonder that.
Yeah.
Quite a bit because, I really think he was what was holding them back because this is at least a little bit more aggressive. I think it sucks ass, just so we're clear.
Yeah, no one's saying it's a good album, but I'm saying it's shit. It's still shit, but it's better shit than the shittier shit.
If we're comparing different types of shit,
yes.
Let's move on to the next type. What's in your fucking head?
Shit. It's just not good.
Did you guys think that All Will Be Revealed was too hard?
Absolutely. It was just too much.
It was melting my brain. I was like, whoa, guys, we need to scale it back. Like, my face is melted.
I was riding in the back seat, and Dan was like, dude, check it out. And I said, dude, can you please just turn the bass up? Or I'm sorry, that was Buddy, not you.
Pull over. This is too hardcore for me.
Somebody thought that.
And
sure.
It got turned down, the volume. It's like I had to turn it up. This is the only album I had to turn up to listen to.
Again, if this was released in the 90s, I would have at least accepted it for what it sounds like.
They're like 7 to 10 years behind the times.
This is interesting to me because it is better produced than All Will Be Revealed. Really, the only issue I have with it is that the shitty parts are really shitty, but then they've thrown in a couple of little diamonds where, no pun intended, there's a few glimmering moments where you're like, this used to be a metal band.
There's hope.
It's like waking up in the middle of a concert and being like, holy shit. When I woke up this morning, I thought I was going to a heavy metal concert. And then they played all the horrible shit, and maybe it was all a bad dream.
Where is the metal? Where is the metal?
But you start finding it a little bit here. Not much, You've still got an album that's basically like All Will Be Revealed, but it has a much more metal aesthetic.
I still think they're working their way up to the metal sound that they wanted to do before. What's his fuck? It's like they had to go through all the eras they missed to release the music they wanted to release that he wouldn't let them, unfortunately. And you're 10 years behind.
I just think the moments when they're not being metal on this album really hurt the moments where they are.
So it washes it out as an album that's not good.
Is that fair? I mean, that's kind of how I feel about it.
So it's an album that goes, meh.
I don't think it's total shit like I thought All Will Be Revealed was, but I do think that this album is them starting to figure it out. Like, did they maybe send out a questionnaire to all their fans? What exactly do you guys want us to do? And if that's really what happened, then the fans were like, we just want you guys to play like hard shit again.
Could you just play metal, please? That's not too much to ask. I mean,
James Hetfield told me you guys were the greatest metal band ever, and I'm not feeling that.
Yeah, I had high hopes from your first two albums, and then you crushed my spirits as a teenage boy.
Us metalheads, we're such wimps. We're so sensitive.
I am. I
can't believe Diamond Head did this to me.
I know, but think of this band as you're a true metalhead growing up in your early teens, even pre-teens when you started listening to this shit. You love metal. Some of your metal bands are influenced by this band. They come out before. You go check them out. The first two albums are metal as fuck. And then you have years and years of this bullshit. Of course you're going to be disappointed. It sucks.
It'd be impossible not to completely write the band off. I mean, I feel really fucking bad for the guy that bought the first record in 1980, and he's like, oh, right,
yeah.
Here we go. So, James Hetfield, that's who I feel bad for.
But the guy that bought the album in 1980 is probably stuck in the 80s or the 90s. This probably appealed to that group.
Get him, McFly.
No, I get what you're saying, though, Joe. I mean, it is...
He's that stuck in the 80s guy still thinks...
It is going to appeal to him more than it's going to appeal to me.
Is it, though?
Yeah.
Maybe
this
a
is
little.
2007. If it wasn't metalcore, it was leftover new metal, and this isn't even that.
No. This still sounds like early 90s metal.
This was acceptable, though, because what's the key word? Metal.
Yeah, I mean...
God, the first track was so epic on that album, and they just fucking ruined it.
Yeah, it just goes downhill from there.
And that's kind of the album for me. It's just...
Yeah.
And
progressively shit.
I agree. What's in your head? And it's like, yeah, every now and again I think about doing this face-melting metal song, and then
I don't.
And then I'm just like, oh, but, people actually like this hard rock stuff, said somebody once at a party, maybe.
I heard a guy said he liked hard rock stuff, so I'm just going to do that.
All right, Josh, we're going to play the 2016 edition of Name That Album Title.
Bring it.
Without looking at it, what was the name of Diamond Head's next release?
Diamond Head.
So you're sticking with Diamond Head.
Show me Diamond Head.
The answer is it's 2016. Every band put out a self-titled album, I think, and Diamond Head was no exception.
In case you're wondering, I'm the one in the bikini opening up the suitcase. With the LP in it. It's Diamond Head.
Dan, show me Diamond Head.
I'm Vanna White. I'm happy with this.
Oh, he was a beautiful Vanna White too.
Man, we did. We really mixed. Let's Make a Deal with Wheel of Fortune there for a minute, didn't we?
Actually, I was actually going Family Feud. I was
even better. Yeah. Show me on that board.
Yeah. Diamond Head.
I get to be Steve Harvey then.
Oh, we're doing the modern Family Feud, not the classic?
Yes,
correct.
Whatever. This album is, again, it's not anything great. It's still kind of shitty, but they're progressing some.
I disagree. I think this is way better than anything they put out since Borrowed Time.
This is the most 80s sounding album I've heard in the 2010s.
It's still not good, but it's better than previous albums. I told you, there's a progression.
If I had listened to this...
Each album's better than the previous.
Before hearing Firepower, I would be excited that Diamond Head put out a classic-sounding album in 2016. It has been a battle amongst engineers. The loudness war, MP3s, all this, it's not classic rock anymore. We need to change and adapt and move forward with distribution. In 2016, I would not have predicted that a band was going to release an album that sounds like 1983. Especially when Degent was the sound of everything, or it was becoming that.
This album reminds me if it was Megadeth, but slowed down a lot.
So Megadeth in the 90s.
I'm thinking of like Holy Wars or Hangar 18, but those riffs, like these riffs remind me of those riffs just slowed down a lot.
I get a strong Zeppelin vibe off of this record.
A little bit. Yeah, it's kind of bluesy metal-ish rock sound. It's a good album. I don't think it's not great, But it's definitely promising considering the shit that they put out before it.
What do you guys think of their new singer on this album, Rasmus Baum Anderson?
Well, you have to. That's metal as fuck right there. That name
Totally.
alone.
He's got
You're
some
in.
fucking pipes.
He can, yeah. He sounds good. He sounds metal. I'm buying it, and he's in it. Like, he's all in.
He sounds more like Sean Harris.
Yes. Like, without the bitch attitude.
Yeah, exactly. I think hearing him sing the old Diamond Head hits would be incredible. But I mean, just listen to this soloing and stuff. It does sound very Megadeth now.
It reminds me of a slow Megadeth, and I think that's what makes it promising. It's okay. You sound a little bit more like you maybe wanted to sound. It just took you, fucking 50 years to get there.
I think that there is some significance to them calling the album Diamond Head, because since 1982, this is the very first, most sincere approach to a Diamond Head release, where they're like, all right, we're going to write some cool riffs. Yeah, they're not quite there. They're a little rusty at it, but it's okay.
There's a progression. You know where this is going now.
I appreciate what they threw down for us on this record. And honestly, I'd have been fine with this in 2016 if there was nothing else. But oh boy, are we in for a treat, guys.
Giggity. Who doesn't like the name of this next album?
2019. The Coffin Train.
Guys, they did it. They fucking did it, guys.
Yeah, now we sound thrashy again.
They fucking did it.
Full circle. We're back to 1980
Oh my God.
again.
It only took, 40 years?
Yeah. Redemption. Sweet redemption.
It had to be that they were being told you couldn't do a modern heavy metal album. And then Judas Priest releases Firepower, and they rush to the studio and say, we're doing it, guys. We're going to do a modern heavy metal record. And here comes the Coffin Train in 2019.
It sounds to me like Lemmy from Motorhead is the conductor on the Coffin Train.
Yeah, he's like, this is how you fucking write a good metal album.
The spirit of Lemmy has ascended on Diamond Head.
They used some of those pacts with Satan that they made earlier on.
Yeah,
and they're like,
they called up an old friend of theirs.
We want to cash these in. And he's like, okay, how long you want Lemmy? We're like, for the whole album.
Can you just lend him for a little while?
Like, just for an hour.
I like this album. I was excited for it.
This is the record I listened to the most this week because it was just fucking good.
It gives me a hard on, Joe. I was semi-hard on when it started. I was full on erection at the end of it.
I really enjoyed this record, and I'm not as big of a fan of the whole new wave of British heavy metal.
Poser.
But holy shit, after hearing this and hearing Firepower, I'm like, okay, these bands definitely have some shit going on behind them.
What are we going to call it in 2020 when bands that released records in the late 70s, early 80s bring back the new wave of British heavy metal?
Just call it metal. Why the fuck do we have to put a genre on it? Just metal.
New wave of British heavy metal.
See, that's my problem. Why do we have to label it? Can't we just call it metal?
No.
Hey, do you enjoy it? Then fucking listen to it. Who gives a shit what it's called?
It's heavy metal, motherfuckers.
You have to be able to distinguish between this and a band like, I don't know, fucking Napalm Death.
Well, clearly there's a fucking difference between the two.
But
you
guys and your
else. Yeah, it's called metal up your ass. That's what the genre's called.
It's not us guys. It's just me.
It's metal. It is good sounding metal.
This is great. This is really aggressive. It's the most upbeat Diamond Head album ever, actually. Even more upbeat than the classic albums.
Upbeat, but still gnarly, heavy.
Well, the production quality is modern, and so it sounds great. This stuff hits way harder than it should, without having to resort to a whole bunch of weird tricks to make it sound heavier than it is.
And this is something you can see in this time. This isn't like shit that should have been released 15 years ago or 10 years ago. I listen to this, and this is an album that I see that I would see or listen to now. Like, this band is relevant, or this album's relevant now, as opposed to shit that sounds like it should have been released in '94.
I don't even think this is a throwback album. This is fresh as fuck.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's dated to now. Like this, it's not anything that sounds like it should have been released beforehand.
We've talked about it before. The end of 2018, heavy metal's coming back. It's not going to be grindcore, degent. How much noise can you make with your face? How much compression and layering can you do on your 8-string guitars? Heavy metal's coming back.
Joe, I'm going to be nice as I can.
In your opinion.
But as blunt as I can. Metal never left, buddy. Okay? It never fucking went away. So how dare you say it came back?
To be clear, Josh.
Get out of here.
Heavy metal.
Don't ever.
Cannot be killed. It has never gone away.
No one can kill the metal.
But it's back.
It never left. It's always been there.
Diamond Head has always been there.
Who's there when you get up in the morning? Metal. Who's there when you go to bed at night? Metal.
Final thoughts on Diamond Head. Dan.
Diamond Head has always been there. They've always been your friend. But you know what sucks about friends? Sometimes your friends are real shitty.
Except for me.
Like whenever you're kids, you guys have a lot of fun in the playground and, you hang out, you high-five each other. You play Ninja Turtles, you play street hockey and stuff. And then you get a little bit older and the friend's like, hey, can I have $10? And they're like, and you're like, yeah, sure, I'll do anything for my friend. And then they never give you the $10 back. And then you're supposed to hang out with them later on that day and they bail on you because, they met some girl who they thought, was better than you. And, in a certain sense, they were probably right. But, you still feel betrayed. You still feel hurt. And then, 20 years later, they you guys become friends again. And you're like, dude, why did I stop hanging out with you? That girl that I left you for? Not worth it even a little bit.
That was oddly specific, Dan. I don't know who the fuck you're mentioning, but...
I was just making shit up.
Very
I don't know.
Generic, yeah.
I assume that's what a shitty friendship is like.
I don't know. I've never had one of those before, Dan.
Josh, what about you?
Oh, Dan's right. This is a band that they've always been there. I mean, they influenced some pretty great bands from the early 80s who went on to be nothing short of phenomenal. They went through a rocky middle, so I just don't even count that middle part of their history. All you need is albums 1 and 2, and this one here, 2019 album, Coffin Train. It's fantastic. Metal never goes away, Joe. Never. They've always been here. They'll always be here. You can't stop the metal.
It's not uncommon for a band that was popular in the 80s to still exist in 2019. The only ones that are really paying attention tend to be the hardcore fans. I know about Diamond Head because James Hetfield is a huge fan. Even I was surprised when Def Leppard put out a new album. Accept has been around releasing several albums, but Diamond Head wasn't on my radar. Now that the Coffin Train is out, I hope that it's not a fluke, because Diamond Head is one of the biggest influencers of thrash metal. No matter how many times they misstepped in the 90s and the early 2000s, they were still the band that released Lightning to the Nations, and that record has given me some of my favorite Metallica songs. I don't think Diamond Head is for everyone, but if you're a fan of heavy metal, you need to be listening to the Coffin Train in 2019. Go back, listen to the classic albums. I don't know who the records in the middle are for.
But even if you're not a fan of this, go back and listen to it anyway, because I told you to.
Dan, what's your album of the week?
No doubt, Cryptopsy, None So Vile.
Josh, what about you?
Journey's greatest fucking hits, guys. And that's no joke. I've been listening to a lot of Journey. Who doesn't like Journey? I mean, seriously. Nobody? I'm disappointed.
For me, it's Motorhead, Bad Magic. I love that Motorhead was a band that never went away, never stopped doing exactly the same thing,
And Dan
and
still
nobody
doesn't
gives
like
them
them?
shit for it.
And except for Dan.
Every time.
Dan hates Motorhead.
And no one gives them shit for it.
Oh, I do all the time. He's fucking wrong.
It's going to be another Pantera situation all over again.
Dan, how do we find out how to get in touch in the show?
How to get in touch with us on the show?
Yeah, I've always wondered, how do we find you guys?
Well, Josh, there's a really easy way to do it.
Josh sends us a text message.
That's all you have to do. You can call me or text me. Oh, you mean for the listeners?
Yeah, what if they want to get in touch? How do we do
okay.
that?
Well, there's a lot of different ways they can get in touch. We have a Discord server. You can chat with us in real time on that. All you have to do is click the link in the show notes, and you're there. You can find us on Facebook, on facebook.com/discography discussion. We even have a Facebook group there. You can ask to be in that group, and we'll let you in, probably. You can also tweet at us. I think that's what all the kids are doing these days, at Discuss Metal. You can tweet at me and Joe personally at Discuss Metal Joe or Discuss Metal Dan. And most of the time we respond to all that stuff, unless it's like something really weird or if you're wrong. But if you're wrong, I won't be able to resist telling you that you're wrong.
That sounds really easy, Dan.
One of the top reasons to get a hold of us on the show is to tell us what bands you want us to talk about. A lot of the bands that we talk about are listener suggested, so a lot of these are bands I haven't even heard before, and it's a lot of fun to kind of get into them and see what makes them tick.
We like to be a discography discussion of the people for the people.
Just me.
True.
And on that note, this has been episode 131 of Discography Discussion. Thank you for listening. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at Discuss Metal. Subscribe to our podcast everywhere you listen to podcasts, including Google Play, iTunes, and Stitcher. Visit discussmetal.com for all things discography discussion, and please send questions and comments to danandjoeshow@gmail.com. If you are not a patron, you can become one at patreon.com/Discuss Metal. We have some sweet perks.
Beer good!
Diamond Head albums, bad.
Coffin Train, Thrill Ride.